Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is your boy Angel R Talk with Not Just NYC Talking.
The city of New York, Boricua from the Bronx.
And I am joined today by someone who is running for New York City Council. Evan, I am not, I mean, I kind of feel like I could just say Boccardi. Is that right?
Boccardi.
Boccardi, like just.
Well, listen, a lot of people enjoy our fine products. No. I wish I had rum money, but I don't. Oh, my goodness.
You could really make some change then. You could really impact and change the world.
Oh, my
with
God.
That
Listen, if I had the rum money, I'd just donate it to whatever we needed in the neighborhood,
So you're running for.
But a dream.
You never know. Maybe you're a relative and you don't even know it yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you're running for council, and you just said something that just triggered a memory as I was reading up on what you stand for and what you were saying. I'm sorry to jump into this one thing real quick, but you just said you donate money. If you were, Boccardi and stuff. One of the things I saw was that you would be willing to donate a portion of your salary if you were in office. Now that kind of stood out to me because I was like, really? Tell us who you are, what you do, and if you want to touch on that, because that was very interesting and something that not most people would do.
Well,
I think.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just think that most people would, not do it unless you're, I guess, someone like Trump who's trying to do it for, in my mind, not other than honorable reasons, but let's not go there.
Oh my God, yeah, geez Louise. Once I go there, I'll talk to you for 4 hours. You'll never get out of here. So my name, for people who know me, my name's Evan Boccardi, and I'm, I guess, your average guy. I'm a fourth generation New Yorker. I live here in Forest Hills. I'm originally from Bayside. I've lived all over in my life. And I'm running for city council because I don't care really about the money or the power. I consider it to be a civic duty. And I feel that the money, I can live comfortably on less than what's allocated to a New York City Council member. And of course, everyone always wants more money, of course. But I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it because I want to see real change. I want to see our city be vibrant and our neighborhood and our community be vibrant. And if I can, say, take 15% out of my salary and donate it to like a nearby park or a playground or a school that needs whatever, I'm happy to do that. Because it's not really about money. It's about ideas, and it's about the people. So no, I never wanted to take the full salary, and that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm running. Really, it's a change. A change is necessary, and I don't need additional monies in my life to do that. I'm quite comfortable here. I've got my 2-bedroom, and I can fix most anything in it, so I'm quite happy with my setup.
Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, that's generous of you, and it's refreshing in this world because I come from poverty, right? We were poor, and I'm living. I have a home. I'm comfortable, but I'm certainly not wealthy, and I could sure use a surplus of funds to pay off debt and pay off, so I think most people think that way, so that a person can say, I'm willing to do this, and you can still, you're comfortable with that. It's kind of, it's rare, so, that's a nice thing. Certainly could use it for the schools. I know a lot of teachers who pay out of pocket.
Yeah, I know one very, very close to me. My wife's actually a biology teacher. So she's done a lot out of pocket. I believe her fourth year teaching now, so she's done a number of things that
Yeah, which I find
I,
that it's mind blowing that teachers have to it's not like they're making a huge salary to begin with, a huge amount of money, right? And they're in a job that is, in my mind, a job of improving society and making things better. You're educating the future, the future generation, the future leaders, and that they have to, out of their own, out of their own finances, fund, to get materials for the classes and stuff. That's always troubled me, and I initially couldn't even believe it. Like, I was like, really? Like, oh yeah, Angel, I pay for these things, and I had in fact, I know about this because they would create fundraisers on Facebook, GoFundMe and stuff. We're trying to raise so that I can get these materials for the students, and I was just kind of mind blown that was the case, you know. So that, I'm sure they'll welcome that. Even if you give it directly, like if you form some sort of charity or something that actual teachers like on the ground can draw fund and, like to help them out, because that is, my fear with donating is that sometimes the people who you're donating to never even get the help.
right, that happens a lot of times, and it's amazing that I mean, most people don't do this, but I
Of
advise
course.
anybody who's donating to any charity to go online first and research the charity fully, because sometimes these nonprofits, the CEOs make a fortune,
Mm.
and it's like, well, you're trying to get as much money to people who need it as possible, and of course you want to attract good talents for your nonprofit. But if you're making over $1 million a year, that doesn't really seem that there's no profit. I mean, it's certainly profitable for you, is it not? So I
What
wish.
is, what exactly is your contribution to justify taking that level of money and giving it to a person? If, I mean, if that person being there and giving them $1 million salary generates $20 million towards the people who need it, then I would kind of be like, okay, then you're making an investment to generate. But if it's just a outward payment that doesn't, return, then I don't know about that.
I think it
Um,
was J.P. Morgan who said that the top salary of the highest paid employee at any company should never be more than a 20-to-1 ratio to the lowest paid person at any company. J.P. Morgan said that, a very wealthy
well,
guy.
yeah.
And I think the ratio of CEO to worker pay is like over 500-to-1 nowadays in some companies. So it's gotten a little ridiculous, wouldn't you?
It's a little off. Just a little, we're a little off on that JP Morgan ratio.
Yeah, yeah, because he was such a generous guy, really down to earth, J.P. Morgan, to say that the 20-to-1 ratio.
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you see what I'm
We're
saying?
we're 500-to-1. I'd say that's you
It's
know,
gotten a little
that's
ridiculous. Oh
uh,
my God.
so we met at an event. I actually got there a little late, which I wish I'd gotten there earlier. But it was at an event protesting. Or I don't know if we can call it a protest, a rally of sorts to talk about this a hotel we have in Kew Gardens, which has become somewhat, we'll say, troublesome. Um, what are your thoughts on that? On what's going on there? And I will say this. I feel like whoever is involved there is someone listening, because I have seen police vehicles posted. I came out yesterday and I saw 4 officers standing almost like in a tactical position. It was bizarre. I went over. As a matter of fact, when we met, I was talking with 2 of them. 2 of them were there, and I asked them, like, should I be running? I mean, because they looked like they're like, no, we're just presence, but it was a show of force. So someone is doing something. And I don't, you probably have more insight to that than I do, but simply seeing them there at least says to me, okay, something's going down. So you want to share?
Well, Angel, this situation with for the listeners who are unfamiliar with it, basically we've had a hotel went up in Kew Gardens. I think the construction was planned in 2008, 2009, and was finally finished about 3 to 4 years ago. And so basically, since when the hotel first opened, it was a typical hotel. It's changed hands multiple times at this point. Um, and basically, it became a hotel housing homeless men. People objected to that in our neighborhood, and it
Hmm.
was replaced with homeless families, and everything seemed to be fine, or at least significantly improved for a while. And now with COVID, obviously they're just really letting anybody in, and it's become a real issue. Obviously I'm not for homeless people being on the street or anything like that, but when it comes to be a severe disruption in quality of life, and there's shootings and there's drug dealings and things like that.
Shootings kind of, it's kind of where we draw the line.
Yeah, I think a
Uh,
shooting is kind of an
that's kind
issue
of when
for
you got to
most
say,
people.
huh? You know, when the shooting started is when I kind of,
Like,
at that point I say, well, I was no longer. It's like you just said. We want to help people. We want people to have help, and the question then becomes, well, where do you put people? And if there's places to put them, I get it. Like we want to be good people. We want to be good neighbors. We want to be good humans. We want to help people, right? So it's hard for me to uh, what's the word I'm thinking of, to you know
resolve that cognitive dissonance between those two ideas.
like reconciliate, or just to
Right.
kind of to say, okay, I want to help, but wait a minute. In helping you now, I have to dodge bullets. What changed here?
Yeah.
What happened? Why is all of a sudden it's been like this? Well, we've had people there for some time that were receiving help, and it was okay. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I'd say when COVID hit is when I noticed the bigger change. And that's when all of a sudden things got real crazy. And of course, to the point where we've had now 2 shootings. I've had um, scuffles with people down there that took issue with me walking on the sidewalk. You know,
Wow.
you
Really?
know, yeah. I had words. It was 5 guys.
Excuse my French.
Um, yeah, 5 guys, a woman, and an infant. And I was just walking through the sidewalk with my wife, and my wife tried to pull me into the road, to the street, towards the road, to avoid the crowd. And I guess the Bronx in me kind of came out, and I alphaed up. I was like, I'm not going into the street because these guys think they own the sidewalk. And
Right.
I just kept walking. I didn't do anything aggressive. I just walked. But in walking, I think they perceived that as, oh yeah, and I see the infant. It's a cute baby.
Hmm.
So I turn and I see one of the guys staring at me. And I said, this is a cute baby. And then he kind of steps forward and staring at me. He's mean mugging me. And at that point, I see the other 4 guys staring at me, and I'm thinking to myself, this was a bad idea.
Right.
I just made a mistake. More so because I was with my wife. I just exposed her to danger.
Right.
If this escalates, and I regretted it at that moment when I see, I'm like, oh crap, I just, if it's me alone, whatever. But I was with my wife, and I just got in the moment the Bronx in me that says, if you go into the street, they're gonna think you're weak, and they're gonna forever mark you as a target. That whole dynamic
Yeah.
just going through my head. And one of the guys said, "Yo, my man," and he calls to me, and I'm in alpha mode, and I went over and I'm like, "What's up, brother?" And he's like, "Yo, next time walk around," and he points to the road, which is where my wife was trying to pull me to. And I was like, well, what about the vehicles? He's like, next time walk around. I'm like, can't do that. And I looked at the guys like, we good? We all good here? Just, and he's like, yeah, we're good. And I walked away. But
Right.
the fact that I had to do that,
Yeah.
I had one guy threw something at me one time when I was walking. They were sitting in front of the pasta, what would used to be the pasta lovers. It was
Right.
like 4 or 5 guys were drinking there, and
The steps.
Oh yeah, sitting on the steps, chilling, drinking, and I walked by and I just glanced in, and he threw something at me. And see, at that time I had my wits, and I just thought to myself, "Nah, let me not." And I just looked at him, I nodded, and I kept walking. You know, but the fact that I'm having to take that mindset in this quiet neighborhood because of what's going on, it's troubling to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's
you,
crazy.
it is New York, and I understand that things happen, but we never had to deal with this kind of stuff. So the question then becomes, what changed after COVID? Something changed. Now I don't know exactly what it is. I read that it's that they're renting the rooms for parties and stuff. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if there's people living there, if they're just hotel patrons. Like I don't know, but you know, which I got something. I'm gonna read because I read something about you and De Blasio, right? You were vocal about your thoughts on De Blasio, which I find interesting because I would imagine that as you're trying to get into the position, you would just kind of just lay in the cut, and not, but you were very vocal about your thoughts on De Blasio.
Yes, because I, I'm trying to be a rare thing, an honest politician. I don't think De Blasio is competent at most things he does.
Wow.
And I'm not afraid to say it, and I don't care if he dislikes me or if anyone else dislikes me for that opinion. But this is, I mean, it almost seems like he has a superhuman ability to know what everybody wants and everybody needs and just do the opposite. And it's like, it seems whenever I have, it's uncanny. Like whenever I have an opinion, or most people have, and I think I have the opinion of many people in my neighborhood, but whenever I have an opinion about something, he seems to always want the opposite. It's really extraordinary how little of a pulse he's got on the issues and what people want and what people need. Um, and I could see it if maybe you came from Alaska and you were mayor here, but you've lived in the city for 20 plus years. I mean, how could you know so little about what's going on around you? I mean, I was really just surprised. I voted for de Blasio the first time, and I actually wrote in someone else the second time. I wrote in Daffy Duck because I thought he would be more qualified to be a mayor of New York City. And yeah, that's my opinion of Bill de Blasio.
So okay, so we've established that, and I concur. I never even heard of the guy until he got elected, and I never liked the guy ever since he got elected. I'm not a fan. I don't I don't know. Well, it'll all tie in right now. So I'm gonna say some names. Right, I got Koch, Dinkins, Giuliani, Bloomberg, De Blasio. Right. We spoke on email during Koch and Dinkins was the 80s and the 90s. In my opinion, New York City that was the peep shows in Times Squares. That was when everything was crazy, right?
Right.
Now, I was too young at the time to understand or perceive, but one thing I noticed, and you may have researched this more or have some more clarity, and this is why I mentioned all these names, right? When Giuliani came into office, right, I feel like everything changed. I feel like New York City changed. Now Giuliani is crazy now. The guy's off his rocker, and he may have been then. I don't know. I was too young. I wasn't involved in any politics, and it's not like I know a lot now. But at that time, I didn't know anything. I wasn't involved in anything. The one thing I can say honestly, and people don't like it when I say it sometimes because they think that I'm um, advocating for policies that hurt us Latinos and minorities and stuff, which isn't the case. All I can say is that when I was a teenager, during the time of Koch and Dinkins, the streets were wild. Giuliani came in. Now things changed. I, I I don't know what he did right, what he did wrong. I don't have all the specific details. And whenever I've mentioned that, I've had people share information with me about how he was targeting people and unjustly jailing people and just blanket. So that may be true. I don't know enough about it to honestly um, share on that. But what I can say is I felt the streets change. I no longer saw people with their beads out, their gang beads, right? I didn't see the gangs in the corner. Things changed. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to justify any crazy right-wing behavior or whatever. I'm just speaking as a person who walked the street. I noticed things were different. Bloomberg came along and they stayed okay. He also did some things that stop and frisk was still around, and there were some things that I actually spoke against, but things stayed okay in terms of just walking the streets, just your everyday walking. And then once we got de Blasio, I feel like things started to change. I'm talking about just a person walking the street, right? And I'm measuring my words as carefully as I can because, I have seen things that were bad, and I encountered issues in the street myself, and but I is that a fair statement? Like you're not that you're younger than I am, but you mentioned you were around.
I think I told you the story of my dad.
Okay.
When they busted my some crazy guy came with a bat
Yes.
and he busted all the windows at my
Okay.
grandparents' place because he got the address wrong. He wanted to kill the people next door, and basically they had to arrest him, and the family apologized to my grandfather. But that was frightening. But yeah, so I'll tell you a story real quick. So they're sitting at home. All of a sudden, someone starts bashing in the windows. They run to the bathroom, and for some reason, instead of calling the cops, they call my aunt and my uncle who live like 3 or 4 blocks away. And so my aunt, this is my great aunt, my great aunt and grand uncle. So they say, "Oh my God, Kathy and Frank are being attacked. We got to get over there." So they drive over there. They hop out of the van. They look through the window. They see my aunt and my uncle ready to defend them with the quickest things that they could grab. The weapons that they chose were a paint roller and a hairbrush. Stop the guy with the bat. And they saw the guy with the bat, and they got back in the van and drove away.
Oh my God.
So, but yeah, things were not great back then. My grandfather's car got stolen twice. Even in Bayside growing up, they broke into my mother's car twice, took the stereo. Things definitely changed. And look, crime is still down significantly. Like right now, overall crime is still at pretty low levels. The shootings are the main concern right now. The uptick in violent crime is the shocking issue and almost confusing. Now it's a really unusual year. This could just be a fluke. But if you said that this is a fluke, let's just wait it out. I'm sure people wouldn't be satisfied with that. I'm not satisfied with that. If I had a shooting across the street from me in Kew Gardens at this hotel, I would have major issues with it. It's kind of funny because when I was growing up, I was taught that broken windows theory. You're familiar with broken windows theory,
You mind just briefly explaining that?
Basically, it's the concept that small crimes and disorders sort of are sort of a gateway to larger problems. If you have people, it's almost a psychological concept. Basically, if you're walking through a neighborhood and there's one broken window, then you're like, well, no one really cares about this place. This guy broke this window, and there's no consequence. So, I mean, hey, it's an abandoned factory. I'll throw a rock through a window until all the windows are eventually broken, meaning that crime can cascade, the theory says, when smaller issues aren't addressed. Now, people have since said that broken windows theory is disproven, and I tend to, when not trained in criminology, I would tend to agree with the experts. But I argue that broken windows theory perhaps doesn't mean anything for crime, but it certainly means things. It does have consequences in our real estate market, the quality of life of our neighborhoods. Okay, If you get on the subway and you ride the 7 train now, you'll likely find one that's had its windows smashed in by some. You've read that in the news.
Yes, yes, that is some. So,
Some random guy is getting on the flushing line and smashing the windows, and the MTA is actually running out of windows. He's done $300,000 worth of damage. They understand that if you have a broken window, it'll show you don't care, and so they're replacing the windows. But actually, they start to run out of all their spare parts. So basically, someone riding the subway and seeing that all the windows are broken in the subway car gets the impression like crime is up. This is an issue. I need to get out of here. So I read an article in the New York Times just saying that there's this huge demand of people running for the suburbs right now. So, okay, broken windows theory perhaps is not a concept that makes sense in criminology anymore. Maybe it never did. I don't have the numbers to back it up, and I'm not going to pretend that I know the fine minute details of criminal justice. But I certainly understand the broader strokes that people, when crime goes up, people are afraid and they leave a neighborhood. And if they leave a neighborhood and the vacancy rate goes up and landlords can't afford to fix buildings or do this or upgrade or that, then it gets disused and it goes down in value and the neighborhood gets worse. You know, you want to create good, safe housing that people can enjoy, amenities that people can enjoy, and the most important thing is that people feel safe. Before for anything else, I mean, if you look at the what's that concept of you need to achieve your food needs, your water needs,
Maslow's hierarchy of
yes,
needs.
yes, yes.
Yep.
See, my wife teaches psychology as well. I should have known that, you know. Don't tell her. But
Our secret.
yes, the hierarchy of needs. So, you know, at first people need to feel that safety, need to have that shelter, need to have those needs need to come first. And if you don't have those basic needs, then people will get afraid and then move away. Now, what's unique is in New York, you know, unlike most of the country, I think the country has, as a whole, has a 2-to-1 ratio. Like 2/3 of the country own their houses, and 1/3 rents. In New York City, it's actually the reverse. Most people don't own their houses; they rent. So if they don't, if the neighborhood gets really bad, exactly, they don't have to sell. They don't have to worry about putting things on the market or rent or fees. They're like, listen, let's get out of here
We're out of
and
here.
as quick as possible. And that's the problem. Okay, because a lot of people care about their neighborhood. They've been living there for a long time. Their kids grew up there. Their neighbors are there. Their friends are there. So they have more of an attachment to a place than just, you know, what their address is. Okay, but the truth of the matter is, there's also going to be a huge chunk of people who say, I can afford a house in Long Island. I don't care about the taxes, and I don't need this. I'm out of here. And that's when we lose a tax base. That's when we start losing money for services and programs that help people. That starts a chain reaction of mental anguish that cascades through society. You know, it's really funny to me, you know, why the city has certain policies that it does that, you know, are inherently not in the city's interest. We had for a long time, and my family benefited from this. They own a Mitchell Lama apartment. And for those unfamiliar, Mitchell Lama was a program named after, I believe, 2 state senators or state legislatures. I think one was in the state legislature and one was in the state senate in Albany. And they came up with this program that, you know, basically is low equity housing. Like my family, for instance, lived on the Lower East Side. My mother's from the Lower East Side, and then she moved to Lindenwood and Middle Village and Forest Hills and Bayside eventually. But my family remained on the Lower East Side, and they lived in a 2-room apartment their whole lives, and eventually they got a 2-bedroom with a terrace in Mitchell Lama, in the Mitchell Lama building. Called the Village View Complex on First Avenue in Manhattan. Maybe you're familiar with it. But it's between Avenue A and First Avenue in Manhattan. and they paid $3,000 for the shares to be in that building. And when my relatives, actually there's one remaining, so relative is done with it, and she decides, well, I'm tired, I want to move to Florida, or I want, though I wouldn't recommend that now, or I'm tired and I want to move to Florida, or I'm getting married and he's got a house in Staten Island and I'm going to move in with him. That housing, which is hers, she owns the shares in the co-op, goes back on the market for another reasonable price. She didn't make profit on it.
I see.
Okay. There's not like
That was what I was just thinking right now. Like, holy crap, they are going to be well off on that one.
Yeah, no. But the brilliance of the program is you do own your apartment, you own the shares, but you come in at a low level, so it's affordable. And that's why for Mitchell Llamas, the wait lists on them can be, years. Co-op City is the best known example of Mitchell Llama apartments. Okay, people. And that's a huge complex, so the wait list is a little better there. And that's a little, obviously, further out. You have to take the bus to the subway. But that's the best well-known example. And look, people own the apartments. I make the argument that people who own, have more inherent interest. Most people aren't like this. People care about their neighborhood, wherever they live, but they have more inherent interest in saying, well, I can't sell right now, so I have to take action to try to save this place. Whereas some people who are inherently disinterested, like, oh, I lived in New York City for a while, and I think I'm gonna move back to Austin, and
transplants.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen a few people do it.
Doesn't help us who are behind, because you're going back to Austin, but we'll live here forever. So that's the issue. I hope I've answered your question, because I went off a couple different ways there. I tend to do that. I have a lot to say.
We hopped all over. Now I have another one that is also something that you spoke about, and it's of huge interest. And I as I was reading, I had formulated a question I wanted to ask you about it, but you actually answered it in a later portion. So I'm going to bring that up, right? You were talking about the Rikers Island closure,
Right.
and they want to put the borough jails. And when you said this can be used for other things, but you actually mentioned something about affordable housing, veterans, elderly, disabled, which is actually a really good idea, which makes great sense. So should we really be worried about that jail in terms of safety and what will happen? Like, I was told by a real estate agent when I was asking one of my friends, should I sell? Should I get the hell out of here? He's like, you should be more worried about the hotel than the jail.
Oh, yeah.
This is what the guy told me, because the hotel can be made into shelters and they tend to attract shootings and more type of problems, whereas the jail, they're in jail. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, is it something that we really should? I mean, I don't want it there, obviously, and I agree with you and many other people. You don't, by taking a group of people and moving them to a new building, you haven't changed anything.
Precisely. Okay, so this is a multi-pronged question. Okay, so maybe I should. So multiple fronts there. Okay, so first off, I don't think putting a jail in a community inherently makes that community less safe. You probably aren't going to have a lot of gangsters and people hanging around a prison. It just doesn't make sense, because there's a lot of police activity. You're not going to see them hang around a jail. More than likely, okay? Maybe they got out and they're leaving, but they want to get as far away from there as possible. So I don't think that's a huge concern. I mean, the Kew Gardens house of detention was there years ago. Smaller, but there, and it still stands. Actually, it was used for Orange is the New Black filming a few times. Amazing.
Oh.
Most people don't know that. My grander issue, and I think that the people in my neighborhood feel that the bigger issue is you're spending $10 billion on these jails. The concept behind the initial concept behind this was that if you break up Rikers, you'll have these smaller community jails people couldn't go to. It's easier to get to under the guise that this is more fair. Okay. The commission, first off, the commission that looked into this, okay, I forget the name of the commission, Lippman Commission. The commission that looked into this said that they want community-based jails. So not one per borough, but like several spread out throughout the neighborhoods and boroughs, and these would be a few stories high here and there, not too far from precincts, close enough to court offices, that kind of thing. Because that was politically unpalatable, they said, well, if we make them into larger buildings centralized in each borough, then people will care. The people directly around it will object to it, but most of the people in the borough will not care, so we can get it passed. So basically, that's more or less what happened. It actually, the point of what's going on with these jails, what they purport is the point, is not even being achieved with this current plan. So it's just so mind-boggling, this whole thing. So basically, they want to spend $10 billion on that instead of spending the money on, say, education and recidivism programs that would keep people out of jail in the first place. Okay, or keep people out of jail who've been in jail. Okay, retraining, new jobs, affordable housing, get you on your feet. That's much more valuable than Mets tickets, by the way. Okay, so, sorry if you're a Mets fan, but the point is that
I'm from the Bronx, so Yankees.
I didn't think you were. But just wanted to double check. But no, you gotta love your Bombers, right? So, Bronx Bombers.
I tell you, I don't even watch baseball. I went to one game in my life, and I left by the third inning. I was so bored. It just doesn't interest me. But if I had to pick a team,
of course,
I go with the Yankees.
That's right. That's right. Oh my God. Well, anyway, I'm getting off my point again. But so basically, the concept that they need these jails, they also purported like, okay, it's going to break up that culture. They're doing bad stuff at Rikers and things like that. You're not doing anything by breaking up the cult, by breaking up the structure of Rikers and separating the guards, okay, and putting them in different areas, okay. That is not going to solve the problem, guy. I mean, that's so asinine and ludicrous. I don't know even where to start with that, okay. First off, if you can open a look-back window for the Catholic Church and Boy Scouts of America, of which I was a member of both, surprisingly, but, you know, then you should open a look-back window for the prison guards who are committing human rights abuses, okay, and bring them to justice, because really, the prisoners, by the time they got out of jail and say, hey, officer so-and-so did this to me, they're going to say, well, the statute of limitations is up on that. You should have said something. And you're like, how could I say anything? I was in jail. And so it's so ludicrous. So they're going to break the guards up, and they're going to separate them into 4 different locations. That's going to do nothing, okay? That's not going to change the culture that's there. That's not going to solve the problem. Changing the physical location of the building is not going to help people the way it
How does that doesn't make any sense. I read an article, Earl Lewis sent me an article. He was making the case for it, I believe. I'll have to double check on that. I don't quite remember. It was a long time ago. But he sent me an article saying, Angel, this is one of the reasons it makes sense. And I read it, and it was like, okay, I kind of get it. But at the same time, the bottom line is, hey, look, if I want to punch someone in the face and you change my shirt, I still want to punch them in the face.
Yeah.
You didn't change anything. But if you sit me down and you talk to me and you say, hey, Angel, you know, you don't want to punch that guy in the face because this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and you might end up in a bad place, and have a conversation with the guy, and we talk, then I don't want to punch him in the face anymore. But just changing my sweater, or maybe putting me in a different bedroom, or putting me in a different block, it doesn't change anything. So I thought that that was weird because the I don't see the benefit in it. I don't see the benefit in inconveniencing the neighborhood with this thing. That if this was going to be something that really made reform. If it really said that, okay, New York is going to be safer, these guys that are in jail are gonna come out and they're gonna get careers and they're gonna be different people. These
Right.
COs are gonna stop abusing them. Not all of them. Let's be clear. We're not
Yeah.
bashing any law enforcement here. They're gonna change. The bad apples are gonna change by this move. Then I'm with it. I'm with it because then I can see a greater benefit to society as a whole. But I don't hear anything in this move that achieves that.
Exactly, because it's politically unpalatable to say that, well, we're not going to take this anymore, and we have to start looking into these abuses by these guards. It's politically unpalatable for a politician to say that because people generally don't care about the prison population. Okay, they don't care about the people in jails. They feel like, okay, they're in jail.
You
They
earned
did
your way
something
here,
bad. If there's
you know.
something
Right.
bad happening to them, seems like just desserts, except the fact that they may be innocent.
Right.
So that's an issue, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. This
There's
is
police.
something too I've learned as I gotten older. I was very, speaking, frankly, I was very also kind of one of those people that would say, well, you shouldn't have gotten yourself locked up. Hey, it's on you. When I was younger, because I was a victim of a lot of crime. I grew up in the Bronx, and as I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of crime and a lot of gangs, and I had a lot of abuse inflicted upon me. So when those individuals were locked up, to me it was like, man, I don't care. You know, you get what you deserve. As I've gotten older, I've learned that a lot of the individuals who are in jail, oh my God, I can't remember the name. This gentleman, the one who came out from Rikers and killed himself. He
Police
hadn't, there's a lot of people who didn't do anything, who are just being held until a trial or until, and what happens in jail and prison, it actually makes you, it's like we were talking about when I was walking through the block. I had to shift into this mode. Well, you're going to be in that mode all the time in jail. You might be a good guy, but you don't want to get beat up. You don't want them to take your milk, So it makes you into a criminal, so to speak, just to survive
Yeah.
when you didn't even deserve to be there. So, I don't hear anything about that being addressed in moving the location.
Right. Do you hear anybody talking about, hey, look at this guy whose right to a speedy trial was violated, who was away for years for nothing? Did you? So no, exactly. And actually, it's funny that this comes round circle. That same part of my family who lived in the Mitchell Arm apartment, he was a CEO for many years on Rikers Island.
Wow.
And later on, he actually became a Secret Service agent and guarded Reagan, I
Oh,
believe. But
wow.
so it's kind of funny how that worked out. But I digress. There are so many things wrong with this plan, and it's so extraordinary that, like, I don't even know what to begin with it. But like you say, I think that the money would be better spent on affordable housing, our seniors, our vets, the disabled, people who really, really need it. And it actually would be a boon for the neighborhood here, okay? Grandma's got a 3-bedroom here in let's say the Pinnacle building. Grandma's got a 3-bedroom. Everyone's moved out, okay? So she doesn't want to give up the place. She's been there many years. But there's people who need 3-bedroom apartments who have children, and 3-bedroom apartments are the hardest to find in New York City. That's why the jump between 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms is so huge, even though it's one extra room, because it's really hard to find a 3-bedroom apartment. So if we had affordable housing that was geared towards seniors who've been in our community for a long time and want to still walk the same streets that they've always walked and the same places that they've always been. I have a woman in my my building, and to protect her privacy, I won't use her name, but She came over when she was a young child. Her family survived the Holocaust, and she's lived in my building since she was a child, and she never left. She's a great woman, very much an inspiration to me personally for different reasons. But there's people who just don't want to leave. These are the streets they grew up on. These are the places they know, the memories they have. But they don't need a 3-bedroom anymore. So if you can make it so people on a fixed income can move into something like, give up that rent stabilized apartment, okay? I know the Pinnacle isn't a rental building, but for the sake of argument, you can give up your rent stabilized apartment and move into, a 1-bedroom that's specifically for seniors, that's for veterans, that's for things like that. And you could still be in the same neighborhood, not too far. Your friends are still accessible. The park you love is still accessible. We can make a real difference. And then families, younger families, can access those larger apartments that these people just don't want to give up. Again, same scenario. That Mitchell Lama apartment is a 2-bedroom, and it could fit a family of 4. But right now, there's only one person living there of my relatives left. My mother's cousin lives there. So it's kind of ironic that she has a 2-bedroom to herself, and people are dying, beating down the walls for a 2-bedroom Mitchell Lama. That doesn't seem logical. But
Well, the thing is, like that grandma, if she were to try to go find a 1-bedroom apartment, they're gonna charge her a ridiculous amount of money if these programs that you speak of don't exist. So what motivation or incentive does she have to? I'm gonna stay here. I'm paying a low price, and why would I move?
I've been here since '53. The rent's $600. I'm not getting out of here.
Why would I? I'm not going nowhere, and I understand that. I do the same damn thing. I had one of my friends who had one of those apartments, and he was giving it up. I was like, dude, are you crazy? Don't do that. He's like, nah, I'm moving. He moved to Oklahoma, and I was like, are you out of your mind? And I was like, rent that joint on the low, bro. Like, works, I mean, and of course, we're not condoning any form of illegal behavior whatsoever. I'm just saying that you don't want to give it up. And he gave it up. And to me, that was like, whoa, and he was in an amazing neighborhood that would cost ridiculous amounts of money to get an apartment, so your point is good. You have a 3-bedroom apartment, one person, but you give them no incentive to leave. You're not helping them. Why would they leave their 3-bedroom to move into a 1-bedroom and pay more
Right.
than likely, if they're paying market value or whatever, and have no protection of over ridiculous rent increases and stuff? Like, it doesn't make sense. So that would be, definitely a good thing to do. You mentioned the veterans, the elderly. I mean,
Yeah, I knew a guy in Queens College, and again, I won't use his name because to protect his privacy, but he's a great guy. He was in the Marines. He served his country faithfully, and nice guy. And he's got 3 kids living in Briarwood, and it's tough. It's tough. It's really difficult. Um, he's someone who could benefit from something like that. A lot of families could benefit from something like that.
well, these people are serving the nation. I'm a veteran myself, right? And I am.
Really, thank you for your service.
I'm lucky that I was never deployed into a combat zone, right? I don't know if lucky is the right word to use. I guess fortunate. I don't know. I don't know what word to use that isn't. I didn't deploy to combat, so I didn't suffer any physical or mental wounds or injuries, in a combat environment, right? So I am a veteran. I served, but I don't feel justified in saying, well, I want one of those apartments when there's a guy who may have gotten injured,
True.
be it in the mind, in the body, that has a harder time than I do. I would want personally to make sure that they're taken care of.
True.
Yeah. So, when you're referencing veterans, I don't think of it like for people like me.
Right.
I think of it like, yeah, I'm a veteran. I served great. I did my duty, but there's that gentleman who suffered that brain injury because something exploded next to him, and he has a hard time holding down a job. He has a hard time being in society.
Right.
That individual really needs that.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
this is the people we want to take care of, you know, and to take that money and put it into these nonsense things when we should be helping the people who give us these, protect us, and it blows
Yeah,
my mind.
it doesn't follow logically. No, it doesn't, and it's a disservice to those who serve. We forget the vets a lot in the country, and we take our freedoms for granted. We do. And thank you again. I'm sure you get thanked all the time, but thank you for your service. I
Well, thank
appreciate
you for that. You
it.
know, I always feel weird with that because again, I, you know, it was, you know, if you break it down, it was like a job. I went to a job and I did a job. We never were in a, you know, like I never got deployed into an active combat zone. So I feel like I don't want to say stolen valor, but the thanks that I give to those guys is
Yeah.
because of their actual physical and mental
Sacrifice
sacrifice, you
they
know.
took. Yeah.
Yeah, I always feel weird, you know, when with that, but I, the fact of the matter is I did put on the uniform and I was ready, you know. I was there ready, and sometimes things don't happen and that's fine, but I was ready and willing, you know. So, you know,
Absolutely.
well, thank you for that too. You know.
Well,
um
anyway, round circle again. um, so yeah, I mean, I think that if you're gonna build a 30-story building, it should be for affordable housing for long-time residents, seniors, the vets, the disabled. You know, if you can find the money to jail people, you can find the money to help people, and I believe that very profoundly. Um, you know, it's people don't need a handout, but they need a hand. And I think that
mm,
that's really what we give them if we can give them affordable housing. There's people like my friend who's in the Marines. You know, he's a hardworking guy. He has a job. He just the housing costs are what kills him.
right.
Okay, with you know a family of five, the housing costs are
Yeah,
what
it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah.
kills
So, um there's policing. You spoke about community-based policing, people knowing the police officers, right? Which I think that's a phenomenal idea, and I've always advocated for that. And I see the difficulty of something like that in a big city like New York, as opposed to a small town, but it does make sense that if you know the officers and you have a relationship, the dynamic changes. If you're from the neighborhood, you lived in the neighborhood, you're a resident of the neighborhood, the dynamic changes. You know, those are really great ideas, which also tie into like things like Black Lives Matter. If we all know each other and we're all friends, you know, maybe there I'm called to a conflict and I say I'm an officer. I'm not an officer because I mean, if we go into all the problems, it's just nuts, right? Like one of the things I think is if you're a fearful person, you shouldn't be an officer. Now, if I mention all my childhood trauma from the gang violence and all those things, they make me an anxious person.
right.
You know, they make me nervous. If I'm rolling up to and I see a group of people, I get nervous. So I know that I'm not a good candidate for being an officer because I'm gonna alpha up. You
Right.
know,
Exactly.
I'm gonna be fearful and I'm gonna reach for that weapon because I'm scared. You know, so I know that I am not a good candidate for that type of stressful job. So we know it's a tough job. We know it's rough. But if you're friends with the people and you know them, look at Officer Tommy Norman. I don't know if you ever seen his videos. This guy, he's I think in Arkansas, and he is loved by the community. They love him. He helps everyone. He knows the kids. He goes and visits them. The true meaning of community policing. This guy, you know. So I don't know how we do that in a place like New York, but what you mentioned, I believe I read was you have some people that live in the area should be policing the area.
Absolutely. I believe that, well, first off, from a financial perspective, it makes no sense that officers live outside New York City. First, in an event of an emergency, I don't need someone driving in from Riverhead. Okay, if we have another September 11th, God forbid. Okay, I don't need an officer drive, and it's all hands on deck. I don't need a guy driving on the LIE for 2 hours from Riverhead. Okay, to get to downtown Manhattan. That's not a good idea. First off. Number two, from a financial perspective, it makes no sense that we're subsidizing all these communities around New York, okay, and not the city itself. Cops get paid good money, okay, and their investment should go back into the city of New York, not outlying areas. A lot of city employees, including my wife, again, teacher, they're required to live within the city.
Mm.
It's very, very shocking that that they don't. So right now, it's actually a slight majority of people. I think it's slightly above 50% live outside the city of New York. So the majority of officers don't even live in New York. I think it's like 50.1 or 50.2, something like that. Live in the outlying suburbs of Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, Rockland, or Orange. So that seems a little preposterous to me. Now, we can't ask people to sell their houses and move back into the city, but we should certainly make it a requirement for new officers that, like, look, if you're gonna be here,
going forward of hiring, and that's one of the stipulate, and even if it's just a percentage, because you don't know the ways, you don't know the culture, you don't know the people, you don't know these things matter. It really matters in how you interact with someone. If you have a vested interest in the community,
right?
If that's where you're from, if if I were policing my old neighborhood, the first thing I do is meet all the kids.
Right.
Make sure I know them and watch them and help them and guide them and try to, it's not like that. I don't think I ever met any one officer that I formed a relationship with or a friendship with or anything. There was one cop that I saw more than once, and I recognized him when I was a kid because he almost arrested me. He caught me in the middle of a big gang fight, and this guy was very racist. He said some really nasty things about me and my friends, and his mindset was, we're gonna let you guys fight, and whoever wins, we're gonna arrest you. That's what the guy said to me.
Oh, really?
That was his mindset. So
God.
so I remembered his face, and I saw him years later when I was in college, and I was wearing a button-down shirt, I had a tie on, and he saw me in the train, and he recognized me because he had roughed me up. He knew who I was, and I knew who he was, and we looked at each other, and he kind of nodded at me. That was the closest, that was the closest to a relationship I had with an officer at that time from my childhood, was him looking at me, him recognizing me, and he goes, like he nods, like saying, "Okay, you cleaned it up," because you cleaned it up. That was the
good job, son.
yeah. You know what? Maybe you're not some, you're not one of, I don't even want to say the word he called me, but
oh my God, I can only imagine.
The Latino word that is used for derogatory expression of disdain or whatever. But that was the closest, as opposed to when you get a chance, after we're done talking, look up Officer Tommy Norman, and you'll see how people love this guy, how much he does for the community. The guy is he's a prime example of just what community policing really is. He helps people. He's very popular on Instagram, and he's become popular through his acts and his action, and he uses that to get people from all over the United States to donate things to people in his community. People send he's right now trying to get a king size bed for a woman and her family and her children, and somebody donated the frame to them now. You know what I mean? Like, this is like, he goes, he knocks on the door. Hey, how are you doing? I'm so. Do you guys need anything? And this lady said, I could really use a bed.
Wow.
And he says he's recording this on social media. He's got over 1 million followers, and people help.
Yeah.
And he has, it's almost like an operation of things arriving for oh, this is for Amaya, things arriving, and he drives and takes them the things that they need, the things for school, a bed. I mean, it's unbelievable. It almost moves me to tears when I watch. Well, it has at many times moved me to tears watching the things that this guy does. And I think to myself, it's a town, it's not like a city, but we
Right.
can do
They know each
something.
other. They have a relationship.
That makes a difference. It makes such a difference.
Huge difference.
If we can, if like the officer you spoke to, you approached her, Officer Torres,
Right.
right? I see her now more often, and I talk to her. How you doing? If we had that where we know the officers and the kids know the officers, there's no need to fear them.
Right.
But growing up, whenever I saw cops, my instinct was, oh, I'm about to get slammed up on a wall, or I better dip and get upstairs so I don't get pulled into whatever is happening.
Right.
Like, this
But
is
if
what
they
we
know
thought.
you,
Hey, how's it going, Officer Torres? How you doing?
they're like they know like who they're dealing with, right?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a
how do
there's a
we accomplish
familiarity
that?
there.
Like that's the thing. How do we do that in a place like New York, which is so big, and it can't not be done. I feel like there's got to be a way. You set up perimeters, and the officer is going to be responsible for this area.
Right.
I'm sure it could be done.
Absolutely. I think that if it can be done in a small city like Camden, New Jersey, where it's been employed for several years now and is tremendously successful, I think it can be done here. I think it can be done there. And it actually leads to a reduction in crime because people who are afraid to go to the police now trust the police more and can help solve crimes. It's actually a good thing. It makes the cops' jobs easier ultimately. People don't want to do it because they fall into habit patterns and they're patterns that are hard to break. But, it really would be a boon to the community. I make the argument, you remember maybe a few years ago, there was a shooting, I think it was like in Florida, somewhere like right above Miami, where there was an autistic person who had escaped from a mental home, and he had like a silver truck or something in his hand. And basically, the cops thought it was a gun, and he was not responding to their commands to drop it because he's autistic. He escaped from a group home or something like that. And so the social worker
the dude that was on the floor with him.
Yeah, he was lying flat, and they shot anyway. Okay.
Unbelievable.
If you knew your community, okay, and you recognized, oh, there's that kid who always sits in front of the building on Clark. He's autistic.
Oh, and that's the social worker.
We probably aren't threatened because we know him. We know he's autistic. We've seen him 50 times because we walk the beat every day. Okay? No shots would be fired. They could just walk over to him. He doesn't pose a threat. He's not going to be able to aim a gun and shoot you.
Or a silver toy truck.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. So no, there are inherent benefits. It actually leads to better safety for both officers and for community, and actually lowers crime. That's what you need, honestly. You need to, and look, that's the problem too, is that people get on the opposite side of the political spectrum. People get too hung up on the linguistics. Black lives matter. All lives matter. Of course, all lives matter. That's not what they're saying. They're saying black lives also matter because we've been shot a lot of times, and there seems to be an inherent inequity. It seems to be unfair.
There's a disparity between, and people argue that this is not the case, and they pull out stats, and I am not a statistician. I sucked at stats. I passed it. I got an A when I took it in school, but I also had a girlfriend who was a math major who may or may not have helped me, right? And I was very good at memorizing formulas. So when I tested, I memorized them and I regurgitated it and done. But I'm not a stats guy. I can only speak about what I see with my eyes. Going back to those childhood stories, I was involved with these events that were less than savory with my friends. And you see how I look. I'm Latino, but you see how I look. There's a certain degree of privilege that I am afforded because of how I look. And I was treated differently than some of my friends were. The level of aggression, the level of consequence for the same acts was
Right.
different. So it is very difficult for me to say no, this privilege isn't real. No. I have seen it. You
Right.
know, so I don't walk the streets of particularly afraid of cops
Right.
because they don't bother me.
Right.
You know, um, they did when I was younger, um, but it was more than likely because of the neighborhood I was in. But then again, that reinforces how we're treating people in different neighborhoods differently,
You
right?
group everyone together.
So that's something that should be looked at. But even then, like that cop I told you that nodded at me, he just gave me a ticket. He didn't he didn't put cuffs on me. He
Right.
didn't take me down to the he just gave me a ticket. Get out of here, kid. You
Wow.
know, where had he caught maybe one of my other friends, it could have been different. We don't know. Um,
There's an inherent bias in everyone, okay, and everyone can say that like I don't have that. That's not how I think, etc., etc. But there's always a slight twang of prejudice, and again, because the human mind tries to sort out people and sort out patterns, there's an inherent bias that comes with that. And you might not even be, it may be so subtle that it's basically negligible, but you
mm.
wouldn't be aware of it in any circumstance. You just
Well,
wouldn't be
you
aware
you
of it.
you mention it to people and they think that you're just a liberal. What is it? The liberalism is a mental disorder. You don't know what you're talking about, and it's like, well, I I can
Wow.
I can only talk about the things I have seen,
Yeah.
and I have seen the way I was treated in contrast to friends of mine. I see I just see the dynamic is different in the world. So I acknowledge that. And if everybody just acknowledge that, maybe we could make things better. And I feel that maybe the fear is just that in acknowledging it, you give it up.
Right. Right.
Well, then you no longer have that. And now so what does that mean? Who's that? Damn, I can't remember her name. But this woman, um, oh, man, I'm drawing all kinds of blanks on because I read so much and stuff. But there's a woman, and she said, in a room full of white people, she said, "Would you be comfortable being treated the same as a black person? Would you be comfortable if society treated you the same way they treat black people?"
Mhm.
She posed this question. She said, "If you're okay with that, stand up." No one stood up. She says, "So therein, that society treats you different because you didn't stand up." And I was like, just mind blown with that. And since then, I did a lot of research on her and reading on her. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on her name, but it's easy to find with that quote. Um, it's something that if you're from the same community, maybe that isn't as prevalent. You
You
know,
know, Angel, it's funny that because you just reminded me of a book that I read when I was younger. Have you ever heard of John Howard Griffin?
it doesn't ring a particularly loud bell, but it does a little ping.
So, when I was younger, I happened upon it. I used to be a very, very avid reader. I still read, but mostly newspapers and magazines nowadays. But there used to be a very prominent, at least in my mind, author. His name is John Howard Griffin, and he wrote a book called Black Like Me. So I don't know how they were able to accomplish this, but basically he went to a dermatologist. He's a white individual. He went to a dermatologist and he took drugs to basically create a lot of buildup of melanin in the skin. Is it melanin? Am I thinking of?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah, yeah.
So he took a bunch of drugs and he sat under a tanning lamp for a couple of weeks straight.
Yeah.
And then he shaved his head so you couldn't see his hair, and he passed in society as an African American. And he was shocked to find the difference in the way he was treated when he was actually masquerading as a black individual as opposed to his normal everyday life. Now, this is written in the 60s. So once he
Right.
got down south, things were not great for him. But it really is a fascinating read. It's not long, the book, and I really recommend it to all your listeners. But that really was an eye opener for me personally to see the difference. And then after a while, if you stayed inside for a while, basically, and you didn't get any sun exposure, your skin started to return to normal. So as he got lighter, he could apply cold cream to his face and kind of lighten himself up, a little bit of pancake, and he would come back to the same hotel, okay, and see how he was treated then, or see how people treated him. And every time he was surprised to see people's inherent biases. Black Like Me is the book, and John Howard Griffin is the author. But it was very, very interesting read. And I wonder if people really got the opportunity to really walk a mile in other people's shoes, what they would really think, even just for a day, because it would shock them. I think. But hey, I don't recommend you do that because you'll probably get skin cancer. But it would be very interesting to see if that experiment were reperformed today. What would you see? It wouldn't be as intense as back then, but you would definitely see something, I feel.
Oh yeah, for sure. But then, and also there's the flip side though. They're gonna, at that point now, is this guy doing blackface? So it's that probably wouldn't fly today. Because even though I can see the intent, I think that by today's standards and the way we have evolved as people, that probably would not be well received. But it is certainly something that if people experienced and really knew, that they would, even just growing up where I grew up, it's a different world.
Oh yeah. Even different times nowadays. It's different times.
Even the way I look, the way I was treated and perceived just because I lived in that area was different. It was very different. Back then I had shorter hair. Well, I've always had shorter hair. I'm just experimenting now growing it, but I always had shorter hair since I had my eyebrows slashed. Society treated me differently. But and that's looking the way I look. And imagine if I look different, so acknowledging these things, I think it's the first step. And a lot of people they don't want to. They don't believe that there's a problem,
right.
And that's the issue,
People have inherent biases everywhere too, and it's not unique to any location. It's found everywhere in the world. When I was younger, my mother's cousins in Puerto Rico, they lived in San Juan. My cousin Jane had blonde hair and blue eyes, and she lived in San Juan. And my mother and her siblings and my grandparents would all fly down every year or so to Puerto Rico, so my grandmother could see her sister, my great aunt, and everybody could be together again. She married a Puerto Rican doctor, and she moved down to San Juan. Statehood's right around the corner, honey.
Yeah.
So that worked well. And she would go down there and see everybody. But so basically, they were in. My mother and my cousin Jane and her cousin Jane, my first cousin once removed, were in a cafe when they were younger, just chatting along, and the people behind them just assumed, because my mother and her were conversing in English, that they couldn't understand them, and they said, "Oh, these
gringos."
Yeah. And so my cousin Jane that wouldn't fly in my family. My cousin Jane turned around and in perfect Spanish told them off pretty bad. And my mother could step along in Spanish pretty well. And she was just like, see, and walked away. and, and but
That's
people
funny.
are having biases. Like, my family are Puerto Rican as they come. Actually, my mother, her cousin Jane's brother, I shouldn't use names, but that's okay. You can use her name. That's my family. But my cousin Jane's brother was actually eventually the Secretary of Health for Puerto Rico.
Oh,
So he's Johnny Willian Rychorczyk was the name, Polish,
oh,
and Puerto Rican. So unique combination there. But he served Puerto Rico very well. They loved him when he passed away. It was very very tragic, both for us and for the whole island.
mm,
But it's people have these preconceived notions about other people, and it's just not fair because obviously everyone's an individual,
right.
and maybe one day we'll live in a society where that's minimal. I don't think it'll be 100% gone, but maybe there'll be a society where it is very, very minimal. I think in New York, more so than other places,
Mm,
nowadays, like growing up, I didn't see that people were really different from me. And growing up, my uncle married a woman who's, part Spanish, part Chinese. I have another uncle who's married to a woman who's half Greek, half Puerto Rican. It didn't really matter. They were just
mhm,
people and they got married and they were happy. That's all that really mattered. So I really didn't feel like that was a problem in my family. My wife is from Nigeria, actually. So
mm,
that wasn't really a thing for me growing up. We didn't really talk about that. I mean, it wasn't really an issue for
right.
us, like some people had. And I don't see why it should be an issue. You want to hang out with the people you want to hang out with and be with the people you want to be with. It doesn't matter what their background is or even what they eat. It's whether they're nice or whether they're mean.
Right.
Everything I know, I learned in kindergarten, right? So,
And those are the important lessons right there.
well,
So,
people's views evolve. What I feel today might not be the
right.
same way I felt 10 years ago, and might not be the same way I felt 10 days ago. People evolve, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. For sure.
Uh,
And if we can acknowledge that, and that's a good thing. Um, if you read my writing from, I don't know, I don't know how many years, maybe 10 years, maybe 18 years ago, when I was writing for right-wing publications, because I had a right-wing period, and it was primarily due to wanting to protect my gun rights. So I had
right.
a right-wing period because I just wanted to protect my gun rights. And I did a lot of writing for publications. If you read that stuff, you probably wouldn't talk to me. You would be like, "Oh hell no," because it's the views back then were much more harsh than they are now. Where because my political life was Democrat, Republican, Independent, Democrat.
Okay.
Because I couldn't vote in primaries. So I
Right.
had to go re-enroll in the party. Um, but that right-wing period, even then, get this, I voted for Obama both times.
Well, there you go.
Even though I was registered as a right-winger, it was just because I didn't want to lose my gun rights.
Right.
On, on, on a lot of the social stuff, I was at odds with them. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean send them back? I'll send them back. All the dreamers got to go. I'm like, hold up, hold up, hold up. What do you mean? What do
I
you,
don't know
you
about
know?
that.
So,
Yeah.
we were at odds, and I had a lot of, sometimes people would say, why do you have that guy on your platform? Like he's not a conservative. He's like, well, he is on some things. He's like, yeah, but on these very key issues, he's not.
And
So,
that's where it becomes a little crazy because then it's like, okay, this person's not passing the litmus test, so he can't be in our special club. And it happens in both parties, okay?
of course,
I
it
met a
does.
guy
Yeah, I just
campaigning.
I just mentioned guns.
Yeah,
If I talk about this on any of my social, people lose their minds.
yeah.
You know,
Oh, please. I met a guy campaigning just like you, and he goes like, "Listen, I consider myself to be a conservative Democrat. My wife's Spanish. I or Hispanic, and I'm not a racist at all. But I feel like I should be able to go and shoot a few rounds off if I want to. Okay, and we got into a conversation. We talked about the gun place on in Woodhaven underneath the J
Yeah,
train,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it's so funny. And unlike most New Yorkers, I fired a gun, and I thought it was fun.
Mm,
But look, and it's different for different parts of the country. If you
right.
lived in rural Georgia, okay, and the sheriff's station is an hour away,
Exactly.
okay, and someone breaks
Exactly.
in the middle of the night, if you have that Smith and Wesson next to you, you feel a little bit better, okay?
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
So
Fair enough. Whereas in New York, it's a little different.
of
We
course,
don't want everybody carrying concealed in New York in the train when you get bumped,
right.
or when that guy mean mugs you when you're trying to walk through the sidewalk. You know,
Exactly. So
you know,
that's where, like, when these groups say, let's abolish the police, I say, so what's the alternative? Everyone
right.
carries guns? Because that's really, you're talking about something that's
Abolish. I said, what's
untouchable.
the language? Wait a minute. What are you saying? They're like,
Abolish the
abolish the
police.
police. I'm like, well, what does that mean? No more cops. You know who's going to be safe if there's no more cops? Me, because I got the 12 gauge. Who else is going to be safe? No one else. Only the people that can defend themselves. Because the reality of it is we're not capable of policing ourselves. We,
Right.
I am not confident enough in humanity, at least at its current stage of evolution, to believe that we don't need law enforcement,
Right.
especially in New York.
Of
This
course.
place, we need it. There are things that need to be addressed.
Right.
And
Right.
I, the arguments that I have with people over this is crazy because they say, well, so you're saying blue lives matter? I'm like, hold up. See, you're twisting my words.
What if
I'm
I was
saying,
your neighbor or your cousin? Do you change your opinion then? I mean, it's so ridiculous. Uh,
you know, we're just people that have to coexist. We are not good enough as a society to not need police. I'm sorry, we're not.
no.
I just told you I can't walk down the street without five guys wanting to jump me because I walked on the sidewalk.
Right. And
You know,
okay. What if you're a 90-year-old woman who can't walk that well and she has to go that way
right? What are what if they push her? Right?
and
I
do
mean,
groceries?
you know, y-
At the
eh,
protest, actually, there was an 85-year-old woman actually who had walked over. Believe it or not, I know you got there a little late, but at the protest for the Umbrella Hotel, there was a woman there, and she basically conveyed, I don't feel safe. And what do you do for her? I mean,
right?
should we give her?
You
Here's,
can pick it
here's
up.
a single action. I hope you have good aim. Like,
Right,
um,
exactly. Right. What
you
that's
know,
that's yeah, that's a great point. Some people can't fend for themselves, and
right.
they need, you need. That's just a fact. We need law enforcement, but let's fix them.
Yeah,
That's
of course. Let's why the problem is too is like you're hurting. Look, I have a brother-in-law who's a police officer, and I actually just attended his wedding recently. And it's like, okay, so he's a detective. I think with the drug division. I won't say his name again.
of course, of course.
But you know what? It's like why demoralize the people who work really hard, okay, who try to do their best. Why are you demonizing the good people along with the bad people? Why can't we just have a system where we reward the good cops and we punish the bad cops? That system so crazy? I mean, if you look at what was his name, Officer Pantoliano, who
Yes, yes.
strangled Gardner back in 14. I mean, that guy continued to get paid for the next 5 years.
Did he
And
sue for his job and win?
I,
I
and it's
thought he
like
sued and won for the. What the
the
hell?
Police Benevolent Association was behind this guy 100%. It's like, why? Okay, I understand you got to protect all your dues-paying members. I get that, but come on. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't there at some point, some common sense here? The same PBA who endorsed Trump, by the way. Uh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's something else. That
Because
ooh
I
la
would
la.
make the argument that Trump has created more chaos and actually increased the chance of crime rather than calming people down. Okay, than
Yeah.
so he's not on cop side. He's created more problems. Instead of calming people down and say, look, this is a serious issue. We've got to look into it. I hear you.
Yeah,
And
no,
by ignoring that, you
can't.
cause more protests, more problems, more shootings.
Yeah, they
You
can't.
cause more problems for the police.
They
Okay? And
can't.
you're just ignoring that.
I think the fears that people have is that if they condemn someone, then they lose that protection themselves, which they might need. But the thing is that if you're doing the right thing, for the most part, we're gonna side with you.
Right?
I mean, society and everyone is gonna side with you. So if we're all doing the right thing, we're all gonna side with each other. If we all side against the one bad apple, then we'll see. Okay, we're all in this together.
Right.
But right now it's not like that. It's, well, we got to side with him, even though I think what he did was wrong, but I got to back him up, because if I don't back him up, who's going to back me up?
Right.
And that's the unfortunate thing that creates the sides and the division.
Absolutely. The most objectionable thing is that in my opinion, is that when they're wrong, they refuse to even admit a slight twang of human culpability, like, we made a mistake. We're really sorry. When the chief of departments of the NYPD kneeled down with the protesters, that was actually that gave me hope, to show, like, look, we all recognize what happened there was wrong. That was a really big moment. And that it was so satisfying to just hear for once, we're not perfect and mistakes were made. Okay? That's, how much of this, just recognizing that, okay, is the first step to making a difference. And it doesn't cost any money. He didn't get paid to kneel down. He really felt that what happened there was wrong, and he said, you know what, I agree. And a lot of cops around the country agree.
I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to say that I saw quite a few, for the first time, I actually saw quite a few police officers going on TikTok, going on Facebook, on Twitter, and saying, that we're not trained to do that. We're not trained to do that. That guy is wrong. And, seeing that was like, okay, good. Finally, someone, is acknowledging it, because that's key. That's key. I mean, how else could you make change if you don't acknowledge? If I refuse to acknowledge that my appearance grants me some privilege, then how can I then acknowledge that someone else's appearance makes them a target?
Right.
To certain things from in society in general.
Right.
Just and I don't feel threatened that by me saying it makes me into any more danger. It's just what it is.
Honestly, it's perception, and we all have some culpability and some kind of guilt.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. I acknowledge that, like I know I have my biases and I have my history. Somebody asked me, Angel, if you were the victim of crime from black people, would you still say Black Lives Matter? I said, are you kidding me? You know how many black dudes beat me up when I was growing up, robbed me, jumped me, because they thought I was white.
Yeah.
I mean, I am the perfect poster boy of someone who should be out there saying white power, because of my experiences. I got the crap beat out of me, man, like unbelievably. But I still say Black Lives Matter. Why? Because that individual who beat me up doesn't represent everyone who's black.
Of course.
And the same thing with Puerto Ricans. Puerto Ricans beat the crap out of me too, because I look white, because I went to school, because I was acting white. So if there is a person who was susceptible to that radical way of thinking, of hating people because of experiences, that would have been me. And I don't.
I love that they beat you up for acting white. What did that require? Years of training? You had to get a script, or what was that? Did you have to join the drama club to act white, or how did that start?
I spoke English when I was in certain settings, such as school. I spoke proper English. In the street, I spoke slang. Yo, what's up, my G? I spoke slang, and I spoke proper in certain locations. But whenever I spoke what we call proper, I was acting white. because I went to school, I was acting white. So that element, those individuals, I don't like them. I don't like them. And I say I don't like them because those individuals, but that's the key. That's the key. That guy who did that to me, not every black person. So when that person said that to me, they said, would you still say Black Lives Matter if you were the victim of them? Wait till you're the victim. Wait till they get you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Do you know where I grew up? You know where I come
honestly.
from?
It's happened to me too, honestly.
But that does, go and attack an entire, if that were the case, I'd hate all Puerto Ricans. I'd consider myself Dominican because the Dominican dudes never bothered me. I'd be calling myself Dominican power, because they never bothered me. The Puerto Ricans and the black guys were the ones I'm talking about beat my butt because of the way I look, the way I dress, but I never held it against an entire race of people or entire group of people. That doesn't make sense. So I had to tell that person that, and they were like, they were just kind of like confused because they didn't know how to respond, So Evan, I've had you on here quite a long time. So is there anything you'd like to, you want to say in closing? Anything that you want to share for folks, how they can contact you, how they can, please have at it.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me on, Angel. It's been a real pleasure. And
yeah. I was a little anxious. Because we just met. So I was like, I don't know, what should we talk about? So I was a little nervous. I'm comfortable, so hope you feel the same.
Vice versa. You're a good guy. I tell you, I really enjoyed our time here. So thank you again. But if anyone wants to get more information about my campaign, they can go to Boccardi for City Council.com. It's BOCCARDI for City Council, one word.com. And, you can just go on the website there. We take anyone's opinions. We take anyone's ideas. We're happy to listen to it. We occasionally have web fireside chats that people can log on and just as a community get together and vent, discuss what they need, discuss things they want to see done in their neighborhoods. People have a lot of creative solutions, and I've been amazed campaigning so far, the great ideas that people have. So I would love as a politician like everyone else, I work for you. It's not the other way around. And that's the way I feel it's been for a long time in our community, and that's why I'm running. So, it's time to make sure everybody has their say again. So.
Right, as it should be, and it isn't. Well, wish you good luck on the campaign, and hope you do well. And I appreciate you introducing yourself at that event. Thank you for being there as well. And best of luck, and I hope to talk to you soon. And quite possibly, when you're sitting in a council chair.
Absolutely. You can come over anytime. Awesome. I'll make the toast donate.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
We are NYC Talking, the realest lifestyle blog ever. Please like NYC Talking on Facebook. Please follow Angel R Talk on Twitter and Instagram. www.nyctalking.com. Thanks for listening.